Saludos amigos y amigas del mundo internauta, les habla el doctor Jorge F y bienvenidos una vez más a Paliqueando, como todos los viernes, transmitiendo aquí desde la hermosa Universidad del Este en Carolina, Puerto Rico. Paliqueando para no solo Puerto Rico, para el mundo entero. Nos puedes conseguir siempre a través de nuestra página web www.swahan.edu/unepaliqueando y a través del mundo mágico, como bien yo le digo, de YouTube, donde solamente en la barra de búsqueda escribes Paliqueando y ahí nos vas a encontrar. Otro programa especial, otro viernes más en el cual llevamos a ustedes entrevistas, dialogamos un poquito y tengo la suerte y estoy honrado en el día de hoy de tener nuevamente a mi amiga y a la colega, la doctora Evelyn Lugo Morales, catedrática asociada de la Universidad de la Escuela de Ciencias Sociales y Humanas y coordinadora del programa de inglés aquí en la Universidad del Este. Bienvenida Evelyn de nuevo a Paliqueando.
Mucho gusto estar aquí.
Siempre es un placer tenerte aquí con
para
nosotros.
Para mí también es un placer estar y compartir ideas y conversar sobre temas que nos interesan.
Sí, específicamente un tema como el que tenemos hoy, ya que vamos a estar hablando no solamente del inglés como segundo idioma, sino también que vamos a estar hablando del inglés como lengua extranjera,
exacto,
el EFL. Y para eso tenemos una invitada muy especial. Ahora voy a hacer el code switch. So basically, we, like I was saying, we have a very special guest with us today. We have Miss Natalie Hammerton. She is an editor for MM Publishing company, which is based in Greece. Welcome to Paliqueando.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Welcome so far. How been so far your stay here in Puerto Rico? You like it so
Very
far?
nice. I love the sun.
You love the sun?
I'm used to it in Greece. I need it.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess the temperatures, the climate is somehow similar, or
Yes, in the
yes?
summer.
Okay, in some way.
Yeah, we're currently in winter, but yeah.
Okay.
So basically what we're going to have here, I was explaining, and all our cybernauts that are watching us, is that we're going to have like a little chat in regards to not only ESL, but EFL. How EFL is perceived in, let's say, countries like Europe. Also your prior experiences teaching EFL in some other countries. And definitely we're going to have this conversation based on language learning, which is what really, pumped us, I will say. And basically, just to start with this conversation, I would like to know, and I know our cybernauts would like to know a little bit about your background in EFL.
Okay. Well, I'm half Greek and half English.
Okay.
So for me, it's a mother tongue. But at the same time, growing up in Greece, I went through the public education system.
Okay.
So I have a very in-depth understanding of how foreign languages are taught.
Okay.
And personally, I studied to be an English language teacher.
Okay.
Obviously, we went through linguistics and literature and teacher training. And I've been teaching ever since, from kindergarten up to what we have in Europe, which is proficiency level.
When you were you mentioned that you went through the public system in Greece. I would like to know, and I know our viewers here would like to know, does that public system, does it encourage us for the students to have foreign languages, to receive foreign language education? And if so, since which grade they start?
Right. Well, we obviously have to do English as a first, second language. And we are also encouraged since primary to do a second foreign language as well, which is usually European language, Italian, Spanish, German.
Okay,
like
so
that.
Usually the typical Greek student that go to public school will not only learn Greek, but they will also learn English and also another language,
Yes.
European language.
Can I ask
Of
her,
course.
in terms of that situation, that's very similar to what we have in Puerto Rico. Our students' primary language would be Spanish, But English would be their second language, and it is taught since the very, very first grades in which they come in primary school. So that's a similarity that we have with the students in Greece, that they have to learn that English would be their second language in terms of public education. The only difference I see is that they are also required to have a second or third language, which would be a foreign European language, according to what you said.
Exactly.
We don't have that.
Yeah, we don't have that. And basically, I'm once again going to do code switching here. Y voy a empezar a hablar en español un momentito. Evelyn, a mí me gustaría que le dijeras a nuestros cibernautas y nos explicaras un poquito la gran diferencia que existe entre inglés como segundo idioma y inglés como lengua extranjera.
Es interesante que cuando hablamos con compañeros de otros países donde el inglés puede ser una lengua extranjera, los estudiantes la van a tomar como una lengua adición a su primera lengua, a su primer idioma. Y no necesariamente eso implica que el uso de esa lengua es diario y constante o frecuente. Va a ser utilizada en la medida en que el usuario de la lengua la necesite usar, ya sea por estudios, por viajes, por intercambio cultural, ya sea por empleos. Pues entonces esa lengua extranjera se convierte en forma integral parte de ese individuo. Pero cuando hablamos de una segunda lengua, en el caso de aprender el idioma primario y el secundario a la misma vez, estamos hablando de que ese aprendizaje de esa segunda lengua es para uso diario del que va a usar el lenguaje.
Y es bueno que tengamos es bueno, amigos internautas, que ustedes sepan esa distinción total. ¿Por qué? Porque se habla mucho de incorporar el inglés o el EFL, inglés como lengua extranjera, en currículos aquí en Puerto Rico, como también de la misma manera se habla mucho del ESL. Realmente, y como lo menciona la doctora Lugo, ninguno de los dos caerían dentro de la estructura de Puerto Rico, ¿verdad? Y es de esa manera que nosotros lo percibimos, porque para nosotros sería un inglés for Boricua purposes. Algo así pudiéramos trabajar.
Bueno, antes de volver a nuestra invitada, tengo que decirles que en el mundo estamos considerados, en muchos sitios que yo he visitado, que nuestro inglés es muy particular como parte de nuestra idiosincrasia en Puerto Rico. Hay un concepto que se está expandiendo mucho, y yo estoy segura que most probably you know a little bit about, it's world Englishes. ¿Por qué decimos world Englishes? Porque estamos visualizando al inglés ahora en una dimensión globalizada. Sí. Donde no necesariamente estamos hablando de un primer idioma, un segundo idioma, sino la enseñanza de ese inglés para poder comunicarnos en diferentes instancias con diferentes personas alrededor del mundo que usan ese inglés también.
Amigos y amigas del mundo internauta, vamos a ir a una breve pausa y retornamos aquí a Paliqueando en unos momentos. Aquí nuevamente a Paliqueando otro viernes más desde la Universidad del Este, aquí en Carolina, Puerto Rico, conversando con la doctora Evelyn Lugo Morales y también con nuestra invitada en el día de hoy, Natalie Hammerton, editora para la compañía publicadora MM en Grecia. Natalie, one of the main factors when we're teaching English as a second language, English as a foreign language, it is important for us to understand the instructor proficiency in the language learning, I would say in the language learning methodologies. What is your opinion about that?
Well, in Europe, we're currently using the Common European Framework for References. I don't know if you're familiar with.
No, can you explain us a little bit what is that? Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it was introduced in Europe in 2001, and it's basically a guideline that will help everyone from learners and teachers to coordinators to exam bodies, anybody who is in this field, to determine the proficiency level of a student, irrespective of age.
Okay.
I understand that in Puerto Rico, when you teach English, you base a lot of what you do on the grade and age of a student. Whereas the truth is that not everybody starts learning English at grade 1. You have teenagers who are absolute beginners or adults. So we don't think about age unless we're thinking of the content of a coursework. Is it going to have cartoons? If it's for children, is it going to be more serious if it's for adults? But other than that, we have proficiency levels that don't depend on age. And it was designed in a way that it would accommodate learning any foreign language in Europe, not only English. So the guidelines could be adapted to any kind of coursework, any kind of school.
Okay.
And what it consists of is basically 6 levels: beginner, elementary, intermediate, upper intermediate, advanced, and proficiency. Those are the levels that you have to reach. We would say that upper intermediate is the level used at work, maybe when you're communicating, when you're traveling. So that is a very basic level that somebody would have to accomplish, a certificate that they would have to have in different situations. But if you want to speak about going to university or being hired by a business, then you would have to have an advanced or proficiency level.
So basically, my question then goes directly into adult education or professional English education. Let's put it like that. Any difference that you see compared to let's say America in the proficiency levels that you're aiming through that type of education? Because adult learning, teaching adults English is completely different than teaching teenagers or teaching elementary students. All right. The same thing with professional English. You know, we're dealing with professionals here. How do we teach them how to express appropriately? How do we teach them how to write appropriately in that manner? It's completely, the aim that you guys use, that you over there use, is different than the one that we use from over here?
Well, it depends on the situation, because, for example, you have adults who might be false beginners, which means that they went through the public education system, they know some English, but they suddenly find themselves in a situation where to be hired or to be transferred to another branch, they really have to know their English. So they're false beginners, and we would then teach them vocabulary and structures that would be appropriate for their type of business. So we have, so general English, but you can also do specific English for specific purposes, which would be nursing, being a doctor, being
law,
a pilot,
the lawyers,
exactly.
Okay.
So you have different courses, and that depends on the teacher basically deciding if you would, as a professional, if your level is such that you would first have to do some general English to get, some a sound base in English, and then move on to more specialized language.
Okay. And the same thing happens with the other language, or just with English?
The same happens, although realistically speaking, most people learn English basically for business.
My question then goes directly into, perceiving Europe and as what it is, as what it is, this huge place. There's a lot of migrants that go and go back and forth. How does the English language is not only taught to them, knowing that they have this liability of lack of knowledge in the English language? Any differences whatsoever in the methodologies that you use over there in Greece to adapt them into not only the socio-linguistic and socio-pragmatic and socio-cultural setting that the English will bring into their lives?
Well, there's a slight difference here, because nowhere in Europe, except if you're going to the UK, nowhere in Europe is English
The first language.
language.
That's right.
So you either have already been taught English before you migrate from one country to another, or you do so in your new country, but the setting is the same. I mean, let's say that you're Italian. The way that you're going to learn English in Italy and then migrate to Germany is going to be the same methodology. Exactly. The only difference would be if you would go to the UK, to Britain, then obviously you would have the whole culture supporting you, giving you a lot more input in your everyday life.
Oh, ok, Evelyn, fíjate, hemos visto cómo en Grecia básicamente ellos tienen un sistema, ella nos presenta a nosotros un sistema de niveles de proficiencia. A mí me gustaría que tú te expresaras sobre, siendo una especialista, que tú te expresaras sobre esto, porque ella habló de diferentes niveles bastante amplios, sí. Tú sabes, hasta llegar a lo que ellos llaman la fluidez, la proficiencia.
Bueno, en términos generales, nosotros, como bien ella expresó, basamos nuestro sistema de enseñar inglés en notas, en cuánto han aprovechado los estudiantes en la experiencia, y le damos una calificación para saber si dominan o no en el nivel en que se les enseñó. Pero me parece interesante lo que ella ha expresado, de que esos 6 niveles, donde ellos dividen los 6 niveles en diferentes etapas, y no lo ven en edad, ni en grado, ni por notas, ni por calificación, sino lo van a desarrollar su currículo, su guía curricular de enseñanza, basado en cuánto el estudiante ha adquirido en ese nivel, y luego lo mueven al próximo. Fue interesante que ella comentó sobre el inglés general que se le puede enseñar a una estudiante, a un aprendiz del idioma, versus aquel inglés que necesitan más específico para dentro de algunas disciplinas o campos especializados.
Ok, Evelyn, y tú como especialista y perito en el área que todos reconocemos, ¿cuál es tu posición básicamente cuando tú encuentras estos diferentes niveles en contraste a los niveles que usualmente nosotros seguimos?
Es una preocupación que ya tú muy bien conoces, que tenemos de hace unos cuantos años, que queremos saber ese nivel de competencia en el idioma. ¿Cómo nosotros como educadores podemos saber y poder medir que este estudiante ha adquirido ese nivel de competencia? Okay. Lo que en inglés llamaríamos proficiency.
And based on that word that she just mentioned, I'm going to go back here to you. And basically, I would like to know, I know our cybernauts would like to know, how can students benefit on knowing about their proficiency level? How can they benefit?
Yeah. Well, basically you have to think about yourself as a learner. Many times we think only of what we want to accomplish as teachers, and in doing that we're basically making our students do what we want to do, okay. But there isn't any motivation on their part. So what happens when students are aware of their level and where they want to get to is that you have this kind of intrinsic motivation that will get them to be more enthusiastic about what they're doing. So, for example, taking a placement test or seeing what their level is, they can compare that to what they thought their level was and see where they need to work more or where they're okay. It would help them to set more tangible and feasible goals in their learning. And a lot of the course books now in Europe have can-do statements at the beginning of each lesson. That means that we show them what they will be able to do once they've finished the lesson. For example, we don't focus any on grammar or vocabulary. We focus on what we call functions. So I will be able to navigate my way through the airport, understand the announcements, and get on the right plane.
Will that be for all age groups?
All age groups.
Okay.
All age.
From grade 1, if we want to talk in your terms, up to proficiency.
Right, because what you mentioned is that when they are approached for the function of the language use, then they will be able to acquire that function and understand how to communicate that. My question, and I would like to interrupt in this point, would be, we're talking about oral communication per se, or are we also talking about other dimensions of language learning?
Okay, definitely. One major difference in the way we teach English is that we use all 4 skills in each lesson. Mm-hmm. We don't have this focus on reading alone. Mm-hmm. We believe that in order for our brain to be able to remember more and remember longer, you have to basically use all 4 skills. Mm-hmm. So that would be reading, listening, writing, speaking, pronunciation. Right. So the way the coursebooks are designed nowadays is that every 2 pages, which is a 45-minute lesson, would have all 4 skills, sometimes one skill even more. So maybe listening and speaking, which are the weaker skills, might be there twice. So the point is that we don't have, as I've understood is the case here, we don't have literature texts that go on forever. We have small passages that will not exceed 1 page in the book when we're talking about reading. And then you have small chunks of the other skills as well. So you're doing less material, but you're doing the same thing in reading and listening and speaking and writing. And there's a reason behind that. It's also that with reading and listening, you're giving your students input. You're giving them the structures, the vocabulary, the ideas. And then while they're working on it, speaking about it, making it personal, comparing it to what they thought, and then we lead them at the end to writing. So after they've done all this, they've had all this input and had the chance to maybe do activities and sort of understand the material, is when we're asking them to give output.
That's very interesting what you're saying, because basically grammar, it's not that you're going to have a whole class committed to grammar. It's that you basically, like, it is that you're teaching English in a way that is, I would say, like, it's constructive. You're building blocks.
It's an integrated approach.
Definitely.
And we have to remember that we basically, neurobiologists have found that we basically forget about 50% of what we learn after 4 hours, and about 80-90% after a day. So when you're only focused on one skill and you're not repeating it in different ways, it's easy to forget. Whereas when you're doing less material in many different ways, repeating it, then you have a better chance of remembering what you've done. And I would just want to make sure that I've understood the difference here. In Europe, EFL and ESL, the difference is that ESL is done in countries where the native language is English. So where the culture, people around you, when you're in the supermarket, at the doctor, television, everything is in English, which does not exist unless you're in the UK. So all English language learners in Europe are EFL.
Exactly.
Right? So it's not a case of what we want to achieve. It's not a case of I want my students to be ESL.
Yeah, you're right.
We have bilingual schools where the level of English is superb, but it's still EFL.
Of course, yeah. And we understand that based, like you say, on where you live,
Yes.
the main language in Greece is Greek.
Yeah.
But what I understood is that there's also immersion in using it for the particular purposes of using it as an EFL, but then again, through the immersion of practicing all these different dimensions, they acquire it as a second language.
Well,
I would say that we feel very comfortable in using English.
English, yeah.
And in many countries you have for example, in Greece we have Gringlish, which is Greek and English.
Right.
So
Yeah, here we have Spanglish.
Spanglish.
Exactly. So it's not a case of feeling that we're betraying Greek or
Right.
whatever language
No.
by
Right.
using English. And a lot of teenagers will speak where their sentences are half Greek, half English.
Right.
We don't dub any of the films or series.
Mhm.
Everything is in the original English language.
Okay.
So we do get a lot of input.
Input.
Generally speaking, although we don't.
But basically, when your children go out to play and to talk, they talk in Greek.
Yes.
Just
Exactly
establish like that.
it. But
And that's the way, basically, and that's what it becomes English as a foreign language.
Mhm.
You go to the United States, you live in the United States. At the moment that kid goes outside of
They
his
have to
home,
switch.
they have to, he's going to be speaking in English. And that's the main difference based on what we said. We're going to go for a short break and we're going to come back here to Paliqueando. Venimos un momentito. Paliqueando otro viernes más aquí hablando un ratito en el palique con la doctora Evelyn Lugo Morales y nuestra invitada para el día de hoy, la joven profesora, editora para MM Publishing, Natalie Hammerton. And when we left, we were talking here a little bit about the different strategies and things that you do and pursue in Europe in order to teach EFL. One of the things that came to my mind was to know a little bit more about the books that you're using, about the materials, the resources that you are using. And I saw here that you have a series called the Pioneer series. Okay, that's part of what you're using over there in Greece. Can you talk to me a little bit about all these series? What are the aims? What you can find here, the levels, everything? Because it would be awesome to know a little bit more about these MM publications and what they do and what can you find here.
Okay.
All right?
Great. Basically, Pioneer is a course book designed more for adults. So although you can see that we begin from beginner level, so absolute beginners, the content inside is definitely designed for adults. The themes, the topics.
And that will be on the Pioneer series.
Yes.
Okay.
Pioneer series. So if we want to start, for example, with an intermediate level, just because it's my favorite color.
That's your favorite color, purple. There you go.
Yeah. So here in the contents, you'll see that we divide each unit into the 4 skills, and you get an idea of what you're going to be covering.
And I will see that in all the books.
Yes.
Okay,
you
let
can
me
see
just
that
get one here also in order for
in
me
all the
to.
books. Very nice.
Okay.
So just to give you an idea, for
Uh-huh.
example, in the first unit in this book, we're talking about, for example, home.
Mhm.
Okay, so in vocabulary we do phrases related to homes, adjectives describing homes, but also different ways to say where you live. So we're not showing you the exact vocabulary, but we're giving you phrases and expressions to use when you're describing that.
One thing that my book has here is that, and that I really like it, my unit is called Hello There. That's the name of my unit, Hello There. But I really like the task at the end.
Yeah.
Look at this. The task at the end of this unit in my book will be collaborating with a partner to make a business card, which is very appropriate.
Which is very
Exactly. So if you look at the functions, the
Okay.
third column is
The
functions.
function.
Uh-huh.
For example, in that lesson, we might have done present simple, present continuous, right?
Okay.
But the function is distinguishing between permanent and temporary situations. So what we're telling our student is that you're going to learn how to express yourself in this area. We don't focus on you're doing present simple now. Okay? So we show them the real life value of what they're learning. So you're going to learn how to talk about past experiences, what you did last summer or things like that. So it becomes very clear for the students what they're accomplishing. So, okay, after that we have reading, listening, speaking, writing, and you'll see in writing that we have different kinds. So we definitely have the essay that you would need to get into university, but we also have informal and formal emails.
Right.
These are again categorized according to the function. So you might have a thank you email, a complaint email, okay? All these different functions. How to do a story, how to write an article, how to write an essay, describing advantages and disadvantages of other kinds of essays. So we're basically covering all the kinds of writings that a normal average person would have to do in English.
What about technology with these books?
Right.
Tell me a little bit about technology.
You mean if we cover the topic of technology?
No. I mean, if you use
They
supplemental
use-
material
Okay.
related to our technology with your series.
Very good. So if you look at the back of the book, you'll see what components we have. Okay. So other than the usual components are student's book, workbook to get extra activities in there. Also, it exists online. So you set it up.
Yeah, you got online multimedia resources for students.
Okay.
That's
very
awesome.
That's just part of it. So online, you would not only find the workbook, but you would also find a placement test for teachers to use if they want to, at the beginning of the year, see the level of their students. You would have the online resources, which is more activities on all 4 skills, if you need it, if you have extra time and you want to work a bit more.
But what I like about this, Natalie, is that you're breaking the classroom walls, by doing this, and I really like that. I'm a technology integration advocate, so I'm, all through that's my passion. But basically, at the moment that you break classroom walls, the students are able to reach other levels and to go into and to, go and basically have expansion activities thanks to it. One thing that I saw here that you have on your series has to do with the interactive whiteboard material, which is very appropriate. Why? Because having that whiteboard in the classroom, intelligent boards, all of that, the student will be able not only to participate actively, but to see the changes, and that creates interactivity into the class area.
I would like to ask then in that sense, how are the students monitored or assessed by the teachers if using all of these devices and resources that are available?
Right.
Would they have access to what the students are accomplishing as they go along with the? Okay.
So it depends on the resource. For example, with the e-workbook, the teacher would be able, they have their own code, and then they see what the students are doing, what their marks were, and they can work in the classroom, maybe the more weaker areas. Okay.
And you can assess their progress, like would they have
exactly
you would
see what % of the activities they have done.
Okay.
Also what their marks were, and you can do that both individually and then also see the statistics. So statistically, they did very well in this grammar point, but that grammar point.
And that's excellent, because then the teacher could make some adjustments also to his or her teaching.
Exactly.
In the way that the notion, the word is coming out also. So the teacher creates a real interaction with the student. What will be the platform that you're using here? You have your own platform for this?
Yes.
Okay.
Teachers would have their own codes, passwords, so would the students, and that's how it would be
Excellent.
done.
So in terms, now this would be the English coordinator speaking. So in terms of, for example, we have our students in this university, they have a lab component that's integrated to the course.
Right.
How would that work with this series?
Well, first of all, they would be able to access the online material.
Okay.
You could monitor that or just let them to do what they will. For example, many times you see that they haven't quite grasped a point, so you might just guide them to that resource and say, work on it a bit more by yourself. But other than that, you would be able to also use the teacher's resource CD-ROM, which has extra activities as well. So basically, this series is designed in a way where you can be very flexible, and you can see where you have weaker points and where you want to work more.
You know what I like about what she's presenting, Evelyn, has to do with the flexibility that all these products are bringing into the table. And I believe that the student in the 21st century, he needs to create a flexible atmosphere in order for him to have a good language learning or teaching learning process in order to be built upon. Okay, we're going to go to another break here in Paliqueando. Vamos a ir a una pausa y seguimos conversando aquí con la doctora Evelyn Lugo Morales y con Natalie Hammerton. Volvemos a Paliqueando. Junto con las amigas Natalie Hammerton y la doctora Evelyn Lugo Morales. Evelyn, hemos estado dialogando aquí con la amiga Natalie Hammerton, que ya es boricua, ya casi es boricua, ya casi es de acá.
Ya la adoptamos.
Ya, y hemos estado hablando sobre estas series que son muy interesantes y antes de, cuando nos fuimos a la pausa, empezamos a hablar un poquito de la forma del catálogo, ¿verdad? El catálogo que ella nos presenta a nosotros trae la literatura enmarcada desde pequeño. I'm just saying that the catalog that you brought to us basically give us a lot of, for our children, you know, a lot of literature material.
Yeah.
And leveled.
Exactly. Well, the theory behind it is that when we do reading, we do two kinds of reading. We do intensive reading and extensive reading. In intensive reading, you're doing short texts with your teacher, and you're doing a lot of work on grammar and vocabulary and reading skills. But at the same time, if you want to be fluent in the language, you really have to up your reading. Okay? You have to do a lot of reading, and that's what we call extensive reading. So that's when we introduce literature. So we use books for every level that are graded to suit the needs and the abilities of the student at that level. But we are giving them stories that they might know from their culture anyway. So by knowing the story and being introduced to it in English, it's easier for them to understand any unknown words that they might have. But at the same time, it's motivating in itself, it's fun, and it's something that if you assign to them to do as homework, they will do.
Language learning needs to be fun. And I like when you mentioned that.
It needs to be at ease. Like they have to feel comfortable working with something that they're learning. So they have to feel that they are acquiring it with a relaxed and unstressful environment and with material that they can handle.
And what I like about this series seen so far is that they become student-centered atmosphere, you know, and basically on a student-centered atmosphere or a student-centered classroom, the student feels himself as part of the instruction, which is amazing.
Exactly. I think that in the last years is when we've started realizing the importance of lifelong learning. I mean, before that, everybody thought that once I'm done with university, that's all I have to know. I just go out to work.
Well, experiential learning is the key.
Exactly.
And it's a non-stop process.
The goal is to create independent learners, isn't it? And to give them the skill and the motivation to keep on searching to learn the language. You have to introduce them to literature, helping them understand the internet, just giving them the motivation and the skills to be able to cope.
I think that's very important that we stress that in Spanish to our audience.
Básicamente lo que ella nos está indicando es que el escenario que tenemos en la apertura al salón de clase cuando estamos trabajando con un idioma debe ser uno relajado, totalmente relajado, y que los niveles son apropiados, que eso es lo que nos está diciendo.
Sí. Y no solamente eso, ella nos está exponiendo que no solamente tener la exposición a un aprendizaje funcional, pero que a la vez se le presente literatura, que el estudiante pueda, que el que está aprendiendo el idioma no solamente adquiera las destrezas de comunicación, pero que también aprenda que el vocabulario y todo lo demás lo va a adquirir a través de la lectura.
Me llama
Y
mucho la
lectura
atención
es muy importante para este
el
tipo
planteamiento que ella nos hace sobre
libro.
El aprendizaje a base de experiencias.
De experiencia.
De experiencia. Y ese aprendizaje que va no solamente para en la universidad o cuando te gradúas, sino que continúa. Un proceso total de toda la vida, que eso es lo que define. Natalie, now that we're basically closing our program for today, I would like to know, basically, what has been your experience in the field of EFL and ESL in Greece? You know, your experience so far.
Your experience.
Your experience.
Okay. Well, basically, the public education system does provide language learning, but not at a level that we would want. So a lot of students enroll in afternoon private language lessons. Don't know if that's familiar
Yes,
to you.
yes.
So a lot of English teachers work in that field. I personally have worked both in that field and with private lessons, which I really, really enjoy. And the thing I like the most is watching the students become independent. I had a student who was striving for a more advanced certificate, and it was really funny because he was not good at all. But I remember doing very complex texts with him, and he would know vocabulary I would never imagine he would. And when I would ask, how would you know that? He would say, video games. So in his quest to play the video game, understand the instructions and go to the next level, he would learn the language. And that's something that interests me very much. Along with writing material for these books, it's something that's very interesting to see how you can help your students to use the language that they're getting outside the classroom, bring it into the classroom so they learn more thoroughly, and the opposite as well, how to give them not the knowledge but the skills to be able to learn when they're not with you.
Exactly.
That's basically what I really liked researching and practicing.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Well, I really appreciate you taking your time and coming here to Paliqueando.
Thank you for having
The
me.
same thing with our friend, Dr. Evelyn Lugo. Thank
It's
you
always a
for
pleasure.
coming here and accepting our invitation, okay? And I know for a fact that not only your stay here is going to be a very successful one, but your publishing company is going forward and ahead right now in the Caribbean. I see those products very well and appropriate for what
Very,
you're
very
pursuing. And any time that you want to come here to Paliqueando or basically your publishing company would like to talk about new books and new strategies they're implementing, they're more than welcome to come here.
Thank
Okay?
you. Thanks. We might take you up on that offer.
Of course.
Thank you
Evelyn,
very much.
y básicamente después de haber visto esto en el día de hoy, ¿verdad? Si alguna persona quisiera comunicarse con MM Publication, puede comunicarse
yo creo que
con
no
Odette
llega-
Ayala
Odette
al
Ayala.
787-249-1483. Ese sería el número con Odette Ayala, aquí MM Publications en Puerto Rico. 787-249-1483. Evelyn, gracias de nuevo por haber
Gracias
estado
por
con
la
nosotros.
invitación, gracias a Natalie, thank you very much. Y ha sido un placer estar en Paliqueando de nuevo.
Eso es así,
que
esperemos
hablamos
que
sobre
sigamos.
nuestro tema favorito.
Y muchas gracias a todo
Muchas gracias.
nuestro equipo de trabajo para el día de hoy. Nos vemos la próxima semana en otro programa más de Paliqueando. Nos vemos luego.